Hey everyone, Marty and Miranda here.
Hello.
Miranda, you are writing the guide for Broken Age.
Yes, I am
Uh,
working on that guide. Video tutorial is all me.
that's all. It's all you. That's all you. You
Yeah,
created this.
we have a freelancer working with me to
Yeah,
get this done. So
that's the
it's
best.
it's a team
And this is
effort.
good because Broken Age, the Act Two is finally out. So the complete adventure is now out on PC, on PlayStation 4, on Vita. Has a lot of tricky puzzles. We're gonna talk about it. I reviewed the game, so I reviewed Act One and gave it a 9.5. I reviewed Act Two and gave it a 9, and as a total, I landed on a 9.2 for the
Ooh.
entire adventure, which is quite a good score, and I love the game quite a bit. How have you felt about the game?
Also love it.
Yeah, it's
Completely agree with your score.
mhm.
It's phenomenal. I was lucky to just play it all the way through.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people haven't gotten to do that yet. So,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a weird. So obviously, I played the game when it first came out last January. Played Act One, and then gearing up for Act Two, I replayed Act One because I was like, well, I forgot a lot of the details, and I'm glad I
Right.
did because there's a lot of callbacks to Act
Oh
One.
yeah, there's some things I probably wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't played Act One so
Yeah,
recently.
totally. You forget who some of the characters are. You forget why you have certain items
Yep.
when you start Act Two. But yeah, if you're just picking the game up on PS4, on Vita, or you wanted to wait until the complete thing was out on PC, this is the newest adventure game from Tim Schafer and the folks at Double Fine. And sort of the first thing we want to talk about is obviously this game is super stylish and super gorgeous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it looks like it just popped out of a storybook. You're
Yeah,
playing in a storybook essentially, and
I,
it just works so well.
I completely agree, and it's so unique looking. The characters have that like paper feel. They feel like I don't know. It almost feels like you're looking at dioramas. It has a really good
Mhm.
sense of depth to everything. And the two worlds, the world of Vela, well, in Act One, Vela is in this sort of fantasy kingdom with a
Mhm.
beach, and everyone's worried about this monster named Mog Chothra who steals maidens at every feast. And then you have Shay's story where he's in the spaceship and everything's futuristic and sci-fi. And I really like how the two of those sort of clash with each other.
Right. Yep. They clash very well. Also, their personalities do too, and like their
Yeah.
situations where you see Bella is very mature and has to kind of fight her way through, whereas Shay is still being treated like a kid.
Yeah, and he still sort of has that, he sort of grew up alone and just with weird disembodied voices
Yep.
and with puppets and toys. And so he has this sort of, when he goes to this place in Act Two, he has sort of a wide-eyed wonder to him. He's
Mhm.
he's sort of amazed by everything because he's never seen anything like this. Whereas Vela, I mean, Vela is like the only person in this world who is sort of hard enough to turn her back on the idea of, hey, we have to sacrifice maidens because that's the way things are. Like she was the only one who was like, no, I'm not going to let that
Yeah, that's
happen.
that's not okay. I'm not gonna just die because
Yeah,
you said so.
and it's that's what makes it super cool. Once you get to Act Two and you as Vela, you're sort of Act Two revolves around that role reversal of the characters kind of swapping places and
Mhm.
swapping lives, and so you see how Vela interacts with all the weird things in Shay's world, like angry talking knives and weird dog foxes who might not be actual dog foxes. I liked that a lot, and I mean, what you're getting here is obviously you're gonna want to play the game for yourself. You're gonna want to watch. We have the full. We have the first like 20 minutes of the game up. You can watch it straight through, but as any Tim Schafer Double Fine game, the game is super well written.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So even though Shay and Bella are the main
Hmm.
characters, every other character you interact with has their own brilliant little story,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they continue over from Broken Age one, part one to part
Hmm.
two. So like if you haven't played Broken Age part one in a while, you might have kind of forget this character and like what they're
Yeah,
doing, and then you meet them again in part two,
yeah,
and like their narrative kind of comes to a full circle, kind of close for
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and some of them have really amazing stories.
Yeah, I completely and some of like they range from like actual like sort of emotional arcs to
Right.
silly things. Like you have the three pieces of cutlery. You have
Yeah.
the spoon, the fork, and the knife, and you sort of realize there may have been a love triangle, and like the spoon just wants to help out, whereas the knife just wants to cut
He's
things.
just like a jerk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cute. It's really weird as you saw when we were on Shay's side, you have this talking tree who
Yep.
you have to do something. You have to sort of make him vomit sap up in Act One as Vela, and then as Shay, you sort of have to try to mend that relationship and sort of
Yeah.
get back on his good side, which is really cute. Yeah, writing's really good. It does oscillate between like really funny moments, obviously, and also like really poignant moments. This tells a good story. It's a really good coming of age story, and I don't know. I like the fact that these are two. I don't know. They don't really give these two age, but it seems like they're young
Yeah,
adolescents.
still like young teens. At
Yeah.
one point, I think we hear that Shay was is either 13 or has passed
That's
13.
13. That's right. That's
So
right.
they're very young, still kind of like figuring out themselves and figuring out this world around them, and it's kind of cool just seeing them explore everything and taking things like for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a nice like cipher for the player of them experiencing first times and us experiencing first times.
Yes.
So the other obviously big thing in any adventure game is the puzzles, and that's sort of the game. There's a lot of puzzles in Act 1. I felt like Act 1, a majority of them were pretty easy, but when you get to Act 2, they really sort of flex their muscles.
Difficult.
Yeah, they get really hard, and it does an interesting thing where especially with Shay's story here in Act 2, you can sort of go anywhere in the world right away and collect all these different items and talk to all these characters, and you can have an inventory with like 10 things in them, and you're not quite sure of what to do with all of them.
Right.
But the way it comes together eventually, like it has a lot of really good like aha moments when you actually can solve one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely got stumped on quite a few, and I just sat there. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Because now you have this big world for, at least for Shay, to like explore. It's like there's so many possibilities, so many combinations to solve these things. But at least what it does really well is give you certain objectives to accomplish. So you at least know you have kind of a path to take.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
not so open-ended where you're completely lost.
Yeah, it does a good job of Shay has Alex, and you can go back and talk to him. Or like, what are the 5 things I need to do to complete the ship? And you can always know, like, oh, okay, well, if I don't know what to do right now, I should go down this thread and find out where to get the caulking material or where to get the electronic genius.
Right.
And it's also, there's a big, just, I guess it's a pro tip, but just try to combine a lot of things. Try to see how things interact with other things in the world.
Yeah, and sometimes you have like a little companion with you. Like you, for Shay particularly, he has a spoon.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can just talk to the spoon, or you can have him interact with things, and he'll say, "Oh, well, you don't want to eat that." Of course, that's what like the default. But then sometimes the spoon will say, "Hey, maybe you should do this."
Yeah, and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's a nice hint, actually."
Yeah, there's a lot of really great audio cues too. Sometimes when you're trying to solve like a puzzle with wires or something, and you back out of it. The character, either Vela or Shay, will say, "Oh, I have a good feeling about this."
Yeah,
if you're on the right track, or like, maybe this order doesn't fit, or they'll give you clues as to what you need to do next. So it's not just leaving you hanging.
Yeah, definitely.
At least for the puzzles.
And it definitely in Act 2 puts a lot more emphasis on having to sort of bounce back and forth and see visual cues and audio cues in Shay's story that might help you solve a puzzle in Vela's, and vice versa, which. I don't know. I'm sort of conflicted on like. I think that's cool. I think it's cool that you have to bounce between the two, but like in the sense of the story, it doesn't really make sense.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, it definitely pulls you out of that, because obviously Shay and Vela don't have this omnipotent view where they can see everything.
Yeah,
it's like, how would you get this information between the two?
Yeah.
And if you're playing both parts just seamlessly together, then it almost feels weird, because in Act 1 you didn't really have to bounce back and forth. You could just kind of complete it. And
it was very much like you could do all the A path and then the B path, whereas here, like, you'll find a snake as Shay, and the way Shay will interact with the snake is how you answer a puzzle as Vela. And you're like, well, I know that because I saw that, whereas, like, how would Vela know that?
Right.
Which isn't a huge, I don't know, that's sort of like just that makes it an interesting game, and it sort of takes away, I guess, from the narrative cohesion of it, but it wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, well, this is so annoying. It was more of like, okay, well, once you kind of figure out that you do need to bounce between, then you kind of figure out puzzles a little bit easier.
Yeah, totally. And the only other gripe I had with Act 2 was that, like, I loved exploring the new places in Act 1 so much that I was hoping for some different environments in Act 2.
Right.
And predominantly what it gives you is sort of just like we mentioned, that role reversal where Shay is exploring Vela's environments and Vela is exploring Shay's environments. So that's interesting in and of itself, but I was just a little bummed out that we didn't go to a whole lot of new places.
Yeah, like you see some new things, but you don't actually get to explore them.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, well, that was cool.
Yeah,
back to where I was.
You see this new location where it's like sort of where all the bad stuff in the game comes from, and I was hoping that we'd be able to do more in there.
Right.
But you don't really get to do anything there, so... But again, that's a really minor complaint, and I think as a whole, which I think a lot of people are going to play, as of now, it's sort of, we had to review them as Act 1 and Act 2, but as of now, it is just Broken Age. That's just how the game is available now on Steam.
Yes.
That's how the game is available on iOS, on PS4, on Vita. And the game, by the way, the game works great on all 4 of them. It's sort of... It's your it's your choice which one you want to play it on. Vita and PS4 are cross-buy and cross-save, which is always cool.
That is nice.
But the UI, we're playing on PC right now, but the UI on PS4 works really well with the controller. Touch stuff on Vita and iOS.
Yeah, iOS.
Well.
Yeah, I played all the Act 1 all on iOS.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
It's such iOS is just such a good way to play adventure games. It's just so intuitive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. Broken Age, the complete game. We gave it a 9.2. You're going to have a whole bunch of guide stuff, walkthrough, wikis, videos.
So if you guys get stuck,
solutions.
we also have a spoiler-free walkthrough for the
Nice.
entire game. So
Nice.
we are working on getting that all together for you guys. That way, if you don't want to know the end, or if you don't want to know the entire puzzle, we have a hint system that we're trying to get together, and you might get these items. So, there's just a box out just for the items, just for the hints, and then just for the objective as well.
That's the best.
So that way you guys can play any way you want, and of course, if you don't care about spoilers, we have a full walkthrough as well.
Yeah, if you just want to experience the story, but there's definitely a lot of sort of enjoyment and fulfillment with solving a particularly tricky puzzle by yourself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's Broken Age, the complete story. If you like adventure games, if you like games with good stories, if you like puzzle games, if you like funny games, definitely recommend this. For everything else, Double Fine and Broken Age, you're already in the right place. IGN.com.